So today's topic, I feel like we had to do an obvious one, and that is Colin Kaepernick and his deal with Nike. So I tweeted about this yesterday, maybe some of you guys saw it, where I just kind of said I was confused by this. Why would Colin Kaepernick lend his brand to Nike? And I see both perspectives, and I hate to sound neutral here, but I think what it comes down to, and we're going to unpack this together, I think what it comes down to is a judgment call. And it's a tough call to make. So let's start by saying why Colin should do this, all right? Like why it's a good thing Colin Kaepernick is doing this deal with Nike. So we're going to start there first. Then we're going to say why he shouldn't do it. And a lot of these pros and cons are very obvious. And then I'm going to go to the chat, see what you guys are saying. So here, and David Zurin tweeted about this too, and he summed it up very well. So the reason why Colin Kaepernick would do this, first and foremost, money, right? I mean, it's going to be a big payday. And more than the financial gain to be had, first of all, he can use those resources for something good. And there's a certain Robin Hood-esque victory when you're saying, hey, I'm taking Nike's money and I'm using it for positive activism. Okay, I see that. So that's a pro. That's in the pro column. Another thing in the pro column, Colin Kaepernick, even though he does have big name recognition still right now, he is trying to take on the NFL. They're a pretty big behemoth. Now, who does he have in his corner? Nike. Nike and the NFL, they're tight. They're tight, right? So now he's got Nike in his corner. That's a big middle finger to the NFL. And that's a big behemoth in his corner. So I understand how that's sort of a nice, unlikely bedfellow. So that's another thing in the pro column. So I can see why he would make that decision. Now, let's go over to the negative column. Why wouldn't he do something like this? Well, first of all, Nike is an atrocious company. They do terrible, terrible things. They're not the only shoe company that takes advantage of labor the way they do, and that's putting it very gently. But they have been caught doing things at a exceptionally despicable level. I mean, not even just sweatshops, but what they do in the sweatshops. I mean, some of the stuff Jim Keedy exposed, where if a girl is menstruating, they have to pull down their pants to prove it so that they can take a break. So Nike is despicable. Beyond despicable. So you're lending your brand to them. And you know, this has been said many times, the most valuable thing you have is your brand. So why would somebody who's trying to be a social activist and has made a lot of progress in that field, i.e. Colin Kaepernick, no pun intended with the word field there, but why would you then endorse something like that? So there's that side of it. And then there's the side of, well, you look at the younger generation who are maybe not tackling these issues yet. And they see someone like Colin Kaepernick and he's in a Nike advertisement and they start asking these questions. Why is the NFL, trying to silence this guy? What's it all about? And then they kind of have an awakening. That's a good thing. The other side of it, those same people, the younger generation, or whatever. I mean, age isn't necessarily a reflection of how informed or not informed someone is, but, just for simplification's sake, we'll call it the younger generation. They also, maybe if they already are clinging to a Colin Kaepernick, they see him as a model voice for them. maybe they're not going to realize the company Nike is because they see his face associated with that brand. So it's a judgment call. And I see the pros and cons of it. I see the Robin Hood part of it, where it's like, hey, he's taking money from Nike, using it for something good. Hey, he's taking on the NFL. This is a big middle finger to them. I see that. But the other side of it is, yeah, but now you're endorsing Nike, who, again, is an extra level of despicable. At least with what's been exposed. You know, I know, you know, a lot of people that they love to throw the well, other shoe companies do it too, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, but this is what's been exposed. This is what we know about Nike. So let me see what you guys are saying. Chris Walker says Colin is part of the Mick resistance, in my opinion. I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not fluent in Colin Kaepernick, like everything he's been about as a person. I mean, everything I've seen from his activism, I think he's doing a good thing, and it cost him his NFL career. I mean, what he did cost the guy his NFL career. So, I mean, I think that's pretty heavy. John Smith points out the Nike ad is getting rave reviews across the pond. Progressives there seem to love it. Interesting. People are pointing out he's doing it for publicity. Nike is still using sweatshops. Yes, they are. Andrew points out it's simply a great compromise. He can get more done by getting paid by them. Then he could just fighting and screaming at everything. Okay. I mean, I understand that. I mean, people are making out like he was hurting for money. I find that. I don't think that's the case. I mean, he was still in the top 50 selling jerseys, despite not even playing. More cynical corporate virtue signaling from Nike. Well, yeah, and I'll say that too as an aside. While I think Kaepernick likely has genuine intentions, Nike I know does not. Nike is not doing this to stand with Black Lives Matter or to make some kind of political statement. Nike is doing this for marketing. This is marketing on Nike's part. They know Kaepernick is a controversial, yet well-loved in many circles and not in others figure. And they also know the demographics they're targeting. So, yeah, I don't... The people that now think Nike is part of the resistance, I mean, again, that's just delusion. To think that Nike has any other motivation other than marketing and PR, that's just delusional. And there are people that feel that way. They think that Nike is... Nike's going to help us stop Trump. Well, let me pose this question. If you were Colin Kaepernick, would you do it? Weighing out those pros and cons. Would you do it if you were Colin Kaepernick? I'm going to wait for you guys to answer because I don't have an answer. Like, it's a tough judgment call. Because, again, you have all those resources to do good with. You also have this huge platform to go to battle with the big behemoth that is the NFL. The other side of it, you're embracing Nike. And if you see some of the stuff that Jim Keedy exposed, I mean, I don't know how... Don't watch that stuff on an empty stomach. It's an especially despicable level. If it was a different company, even if it was a company that, you know, is far from perfect, which none of them are. These people are like, well, all corporate companies are blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, I know. But again, we're talking magnitude here, and Nike is the worst of the worst. I mean, I'll say, if it was Adidas, if I was Colin Kaepernick and it was Adidas, based on what I know about Adidas, I'd probably be like, yeah, this is worth it. But, man, Nike. I don't know. Let me see what you guys are saying. It's a very tough judgment call. I'll read your guys' answers, and I'll just play devil's advocate. Jennifer points out Nike is about as resistant as a leech. Frozen Wolf points out, if you buy Nike's crap, you're paying to wear the company's logo and advertise it for them. By contrast, pro athletes get paid to advertise for them. Yes, that's true, but they're also giving that company their brand. And that's the judgment call we're talking about. Joseph points out the marketing is working. I have friends who are Kaepernick fans, and they were thrilled by the news of this. One of them even went out and bought his new shoes from Nike. Alibaba says no, wouldn't do it. Jordan says nope, wouldn't do it. David says yes. John says if I were Colin, I totally would. Chris Walker points out if Colin cared, he would have spoke up to the 1% when he was in the 2013 Super Bowl. Maybe. I think he was kind of focused on the game. People are starting to recognize these corporate giants for what they are. Amar says, no, I wouldn't. Statutory Grape says, no. Extinction Ritual says, I would sign it quick, fast, and in a hurry. Amar says, hashtag no sellouts. Mike says, I would, then I'd start pointing out sweatshops. Yeah, I mean, but then people would be able to call out your hypocrisy, right? Like if you were calling it, wouldn't they say, well, you just advertised with them. You just endorsed their brand. And Ali points out, you can't sign a deal and then call them out on sweatshops because it's in the contract. I don't know if that's true or not. I've never seen one of those contracts, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of clause like that in it. I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of speculations that you can't speak ill of the company if you sign the contract. I mean, I'm sure that's in there. As far as all the details of that, I can't speak to that. And again, I wouldn't, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think, if I had to take a guess, I don't think that this is just a monetary decision for Colin Kaepernick. I really don't. I don't think that's the only factor he took into account. Because I don't think he's hurting financially. I think it's more of he weighed a lot of those pros and cons and made a judgment call. And it's a tough call to make. I'll say this. If it was me, if it was a different company, I'd have an easy time saying yes. Because I would see those pros and I would realize that it's worth it. But Nike, ooh, that's pushing it. That's pushing it. And I think I'd be worried about my credibility, aligning myself with Nike. But, you know, how much of the general public is really aware of how disgusting Nike is, and how many think, well, they're no different than any other corporate company. So, yeah.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your news on with Ron.